Ready?
Oh, you can do it whenever you want because remember I can piece together things.
Okay. All right. Hey everyone, it's Hannah. I wanted to quickly ask if you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It goes a long way in getting the show in front of other listeners. If you listen on a platform that doesn't do reviews, please follow us on social media, like the show, or leave a comment. Thank you. We love you guys, and we hope you enjoy the show. You're listening to The Tales We Tell, a podcast about spooky stories, unsolved mysteries, and local lore. I'm your host, Hannah Parch.
And I'm Katy.
Welcome back. I feel like you can hear the cheesecake on my voice.
I was thinking the same thing about me. I'm just like waiting for my turn. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get one of those like weird like throat bubbles or whatever that like your voice sounds weird.
Yeah.
Well, but I didn't, so yay.
Yay. Surprise, everyone. We had cheesecake again. But
It was needed.
Have great reasons for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. And
I'm very tired.
yeah, well, okay, I'll just say this. You already know this. Listeners do not know this. I forgot like a dummy that Jarek and I are going out of town and therefore had to figure out what we're doing about next week's episode. When I texted you, Katy, where I was like, I'll just write a second episode. It'll be fine. I had not finished the first episode. And I finished that one. And I was like, this is great. Everything will be fine. And then it was not until yesterday. That's not true. It was Friday night that I figured out what the episode was going to be on. And so I spent all day yesterday working on this. And when you hear what this is, you will understand why my heart needs to get this out of me and release it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I'm sorry that I'm giving you this one and not the other one that I had prepared that is much milder.
It's okay. It's not like I'm having a tough time or anything myself.
Katy came in and literally face planted on my couch. And I thought she might have murdered her husband based on the way she was talking in the past tense about him. But
I'm too tired for murder. That was my response.
I mean, I haven't actually seen him alive, so we'll see. But
well, no, I had to at least let him live so I could come record because I needed somebody to be at home with the critter.
That's true. That's a good point. I was gonna say I haven't seen him lately, so who knows? Well, I have a shout out to do, which is to our listener Sarah, because she sent me a bunch of suggestions, which I loved. And she was like, I have some suggestions if you want them. And I was like, always. Send them always. And so, Sarah, I have requested the book. That was one of the suggestions. And I don't want to give away what that was. Because I looked it up and I was like, ooh, I can't just read up on this. Like, I got to read the book because the book is like a memoir by someone who was involved in it. And then I put another one of the topics in the lineup. And now looking back on it, I should have just done that one because it's like way less dark than this one. And she gave me a bunch of other kind of dark ones. And she's like, warning, these are kind of dark. You might need whiskey for them. And I was like, oh, it's fine. Totally fine. Like,
we're chill with that.
I'll pick a lighter one. And then I fucking just... Listen, this is what happened. I'm just going to go ahead and tell everyone. What happened is my sister told me to watch one documentary on Netflix, which I did, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because I might still do an episode on that because it scared the shit out of me in the way that tragic things and people doing scary things that endanger themselves and also has to do with the ocean.
I was about to say something about the ocean.
It scares me so much. And so then I was on like the documentary section of Netflix and I was like, oh, let me just scroll through this. So then I found the documentary about what I'm about to tell you about. And I was like, oh, shit. And then I found out there's an HBO documentary about it. And so then I watched that one. And then I went back and rewatched the Netflix one because I was like, I wasn't paying attention enough because I was coloring during it to try to calm my mind. So anyways, as soon as I heard the story I was like, this is it. So, anyways. But Sarah also gave us a palate cleanser, which is her cat, Java.
Well, we have to wait.
Oh, well, there's multiple pictures. Okay, well, this is Java. This is one picture.
Oh, so cute. Sweet.
I know.
I love
sorry.
black
She
cats.
is so sweet. And she's fluffy, which I love.
Black floofs.
And Sarah said that she's not a decaf Java. She's crazy. So.
Well, she's black cat, so yeah.
So this is just part 1 of palette cleansers.
I approve.
Episode rating. MA17. If you are young and impressionable, go away. You can't listen to this.
Even if you're old and impressionable.
Yeah. Which rolls right into my content warning, which is really just for graphic violence. And I'm going to try to be as brief and as respectful as I possibly can with it. And also there's 2 very excellent documentaries, like I mentioned. Okay, the first documentary is called Into the Deep. That is on Netflix. And then the second one is called Undercurrent, and that is on HBO. Shockingly, the ocean is the least scary part of this story.
I'm actually going to the beach this week, so I'm going to go say hi to the ocean for you.
Oh, great.
Honestly, we might not even make it out to the beach.
I'm going the opposite direction. I'm going...
That's where I prefer to go, is tour the mountains. But my father-in-law has a beach house, so... But they have a pool, and I love being in the pool, so...
I also like the pool. I tried to get a hotel with a pool, and it didn't happen.
That's a bummer.
I know. But now, looking at our schedule, I really don't think there's going to be time for it. So, a lot of driving. Anyways, today I'm going to tell you the story of Kim Wall. And I'm going to call this episode Kim Wall because I really want it to be about her and not about the other person involved. Okay? All right. Here's your dossier. Woohoo. Your first picture is Kim.
Oh, she's pretty.
I know. She's so beautiful. I tried to put
I like
multiple...
the hair.
I know. I tried to put multiple pictures in there, and because I was using our desktop computer and just printing off of the notes application, it did not work. Okay. Kim Isabel Fredrika Wall, full name, was born March 23rd of 1987 in Trelleborg, Sweden, to parents Joachim and Ingrid. She had one brother named Joachim.
As in, like Joaquin?
Well, it's not spelled like Joachim. It's spelled Joachim. I hope it's
Swedish. Maybe it's like Joachim or something.
okay. Joachim. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Let's look that up. That's probably smart. Also, I've heard her last name pronounced Val, so I don't know. I know her first name is pronounced Kim. I like that you do literally what I could, like the least that I could do.
Joachim.
Oh, Joachim. Okay. Okay, so Joachim and Ingrid. I'm pretty confident in Ingrid. She had one brother, Tom. Also pretty confident.
Kim and Tom.
Kim
Love
and
it.
Tom.
Here for it.
I read one article that said she came from a family of journalists, but it didn't clarify which family members. So I assume either one or both of her parents and possibly her brother. I don't know. But Kim was also a journalist. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science in International Relations from the London School of Economics and Political Science. I was not trying to toast. I was trying to put my wine down.
Yeah, that's why I didn't try and join you in a toast. I was like, is she going to spill it?
And she got her master's in journalism and international affairs from Columbia University. And then after that, she began working as an independent journalist, where her work appeared in the New York Times, Time Magazine, The Guardian, Vice, etc., like all the big ones. She was known by her colleagues for picking unconventional topics to cover within the realm of social justice, foreign policy, pop culture, gender, etc. For example, she covered the effects of nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands. That was thanks to the U.S. We did that. That was us. She also covered, quote, Cuba's underground internet providers who download and disseminate new episodes of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Didn't know that was a thing. She also interviewed self-proclaimed vampires and plus-size pole dancers, and she fearlessly traveled to wherever the next story was, such as North Korea, Sri Lanka, Uganda, etc. And she seemed genuinely very excited to do all of this and, like, loved every minute of it.
She sounds so much more accomplished than me, and she's only 2 years older.
I know. But she was like, there's just pictures of her just being the happiest, best, and like people only had obviously good things to say, but like in the most like, you know, when people, you can tell when people are saying nice things just to say nice things,
generic things like, well, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, so I'll just say, you know,
yeah,
super basic.
Yeah. And this was like, she was a really good reporter. She picked really interesting topics to cover, and like she was
had a unique angle for them all.
And then like also she was a female reporter, and like
just some of the topics you mentioned, I want to go look her up and look at and read some of her articles.
Yeah. Which like I would encourage everyone to do. To quote an article by Alexis Okiowo, who was a friend and fellow journalist of Kim's, Kim was, quote, a rush of positive energy, a force so alive that it always felt good simply to be around her. So in 2017...
This is another reason you should be friends with writers.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if they have to eulogize you or whatever, they'll do it in like a beautiful way that makes you sound even more awesome.
I agree.
Whereas someone like me would just describe you as awesome, clearly.
So in 2017, Kim was living in Copenhagen with her boyfriend. I'm going to go with Ole. It's O-L-E. Stobe. S-T-O-B-B-E. Again, I'm only needing to say this name like twice, maybe. Mm-hmm. They were living in Copenhagen, and they were planning on moving to Beijing on August 16th. But Kim was also working on her next project, which was an article she planned to submit to Vice magazine about an eccentric Danish inventor named Peter Madsen. He is your next picture. So Peter Madsen was born January 12th, 1971 in Denmark to parents Annie and Carl. Annie was 32 years younger than Carl, and she had 3 sons by a previous marriage. Carl worked apparently in Nazi Germany and was physically and probably like psychologically and emotionally abusive to his children. I imagine probably also to his much younger wife, because Carl and Annie divorced when Peter was 6. And Peter didn't immediately go to live with his father, but eventually went to live with just his father, and then allegedly never saw his mother again. So, and he has some, like, not nice things to say about his mom. So, Peter was an entrepreneur and a rocket enthusiast. However, he never finished any formal education after secondary school.
See, that trio right there, I was going to say, that's a combination that makes me nervous. But nope, you just made the trio, the trifecta of we have a problem.
Uh-huh. He did take some courses in welding and engineering. Just took some courses in it. Did not get a degree in any of those things. In 2001, he began to build submarines. So this man makes you want to roll your eyes so far back. Like, just, okay. And by the way, he's not like a millionaire. Like, he's not, because that was the first thing I thought of when I was like, oh, some guy building submarines, partly because of all the stuff that just happened. I was like, damn, another billionaire building stupid submarines. He's literally getting like other people to fund his stupid projects. He's just like, look how cool and eccentric I am. We can build submarines out of like you can buy from the like Lowe's or whatever they have in Denmark. So he eventually built 3 submarines. They were called Freya, Kraka, and Nautilus. And Nautilus was the biggest of the 3, and it was considered like his masterpiece. And the Navy, like the Danish Navy, was aware of him and his projects. And they were not thrilled. They were like, we did not really love like civilians building submarines. So we like...
It's not a sanctioned activity.
Yeah, they were like, we were kind of keeping an eye.
Yep.
We were aware of him. He was on our radar, so to speak. In 2008...
Sounds like out of the beeps, the sweeps, and the creeps, he was probably the creep.
Yeah, for sure. In 2008, he co-founded Copenhagen Suborbitals with Danish architect Christian von Bengtsen. Whatever. Again, not an important person. According to Wikipedia, this is a crowd-funded, open-source human space program. So again, I'm like, okay, take the billionaires that are building submarines, add in now, like, Elon Musk, but take away the billionaire part of it. So, like...
Just a weirdo.
So, yeah. So, now we've got... he's like, okay, now we're gonna build rockets. So he founds this company. The whole goal is we're a private company. We're going to build rockets and like send people into space, which it's like, okay, there's already programs to do that, but whatever. He resigned from that company in 2014. He would say because he felt like he wasn't being allowed enough control. Like he literally says in an interview, I was building the rockets, I was doing this, and then this guy Christian, the partner or whatever, came up to him and said like, I don't know if you can be at the next launch or whatever. And he's like, oh, now I have a boss again and I didn't want a boss. But like truthfully what happened is that he was not in control as much as he wanted to be in control. Like there were too many people involved and it wasn't. Anyways.
He didn't have the final say on everything.
Yes, exactly. So he resigned in 2014. And then that same year he started Rocket Madsen Laboratory, RML, which he also called Space Lab, which that's already a thing. You can't, whatever. And it's basically the same thing as Copenhagen Suborbitals, but it's just solely owned and managed by him. It had the same goal, which was to develop and construct a manned spacecraft, and he would, quote, hire interns and volunteers to do the work. All of these people were unpaid. So people generally regarded Peter as a genius, and therefore he was allowed to get away with certain behaviors. He was very charismatic to some people, I guess. One former friend said that he appealed to the childish dream in everyone. And he kind of pointed out that, like, one of the reasons that so many people were okay with working for him for free and just volunteering was because they were like, it was really cool to get to work with him and to get to work on, like, making submarines and making rockets without having to, like, try to work for NASA, I guess. Which I'm like, okay, I get kind of the appeal if there's some guy that you believe is, like, maybe a genius or, you know, like, maybe whatever. You're getting to build rockets and you're getting to build submarines and, like, all of this stuff. And it's a more accessible way for you to do that without having to, like, join the Air Force or Space Force or I don't know what they have in Denmark. So I get that. But he also was narcissistic and he also could have a temper. And so the same friend who said...
You mean the man who resigned from a company because he didn't always get his way?
I literally said he left Copenhagen Suborbitals because he was no longer the center of attention. Yes. Yeah, so that same friend said that he knew Peter was manipulative and narcissistic, but let him get away with it for the, quote, greater vision. Which is where I would like to pause and say, can we please stop letting
the greater good
people get away with shitty behavior for the sake of their, quote, genius or like
their potential.
Oh my gosh.
I hate the word potential.
I do too. Much. And like for the sake of like art
such a
or
dirty word for me.
And like shitty behavior is shitty behavior. Like regardless of who's doing it.
Well, it's the same as the saying, you know, boys will be boys.
No,
that's not okay.
Like human
that
beings
doesn't
should
justify it.
Yeah, and I was listening to a podcast you're wrong about, which I think I've mentioned before. I've actually listened to this episode twice because I think I've said this, I'm on a Fleetwood Mac journey right now. And so they have an episode that's about the making of the album Rumors, which I've also been listening to obsessively.
I saw you're on the record.
We also recently, our record player broke, and so we also recently got a new one. And one of the things that they mention in it is Lindsey Buckingham had a famously terrible temper, and there was like a instance or whatever when he blew up at like the engineers. I guess that was a thing in the day. Someone was an engineer for the recording or whatever, and he like
sound engineer.
Yeah, I think okay, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
I knew there was an engineer. I didn't know what it was for.
Yeah, no. Just not the word engineer doesn't only apply to people who like design buildings and structures.
Thank you.
There's other
I don't know.
other types of engineers. Well, I mean,
engineer.
you know, train conductors are engineers. My dad's an engineer.
A sound engineer?
No, civil structural. He designs offshore oil platforms.
Anyways, but they said something along the same lines of he was allowed to get away with this behavior for the sake of this great album, because Fleetwood Mac at that time was a great band and was like becoming famous, and like they were working on this album that was obviously about to become like this great album. And so it was like, oh, well, that's just Lindsay's behavior. He just has a little bit of a temper. And it's like, no, you shouldn't fucking allow people to scream at their coworkers. Like, that's an unsafe work environment. And also, that's not okay behavior for anyone. So, and I'm also just sick of people being like, Elon Musk is a genius and everything he does is amazing. And it's like,
Is it though? Is it?
Is it? Sorry, I know we're not talking about Elon Musk.
He's just been in the news with his ex lately.
Also, everyone
The letter X, not his.
Oh.
Like not an ex relation, not an
his
ex
child.
Or his child.
Okay, so Kim had heard of Peter while she was living in Copenhagen because RML was based in Copenhagen. And she obviously saw the potential of a story here, so she reached out to see if she could interview him. And coincidentally, there was already another journalist / filmmaker named Emma Sullivan who had been making a documentary about Peter and his little projects for the past several months. And this is what would become the documentary Into the Deep, which is on Netflix. And so it's actually in this documentary that Peter explains the purpose of the submarines that he's got, specifically the Nautilus, which I think is the only one that they were using at that point. So he says the Nautilus was supposed to act as like their, quote, mission control for the launch of their rocket. Because it was, I guess...
Why do you need something underwater
Listen, I have no
to launch
fucking
something
idea.
from land
don't
to
know.
space?
They're like launching it over the Baltic Sea. I guess for some reason they needed a submarine, I guess, out in the middle of the Baltic Sea I have no fucking idea. I also very much got the impression that he treated this submarine like it was like his cool toy. Like,
You just wanted to show it off.
yeah, like, look, I made this cool toy. It was a functional submarine. Like, this was not a Titan submersible situation. He also was not trying to go 5 miles underneath the ocean, whatever, however deep. I've already forgotten. Okay, so on Thursday, August 10th, 2017, Peter texted Kim and invited her onto the submarine Nautilus to do the interview that she had asked for. And Kim was supposed to be going to a going away party that night because she and Ole were moving, like, in
Beijing,
a week.
right?
Yeah, to Beijing. But she also really wanted this story. She was an extremely dedicated journalist, and so she decided to skip the party and go on this sub.
Never skip a party.
I know. So they depart around 7:20 p.m. and the trip is supposed to last about 2 hours. Around 2:30 a.m., Ole gets concerned because Kim hasn't come home yet. And so he contacts the Danish Coast Guard. And by 3:30 a.m., the Coast Guard is actively searching for the Nautilus because it has not returned.
Well, that's impressive response time.
I know.
Feel like police in our stories. But again, Coast Guard is like a government entity, and the government is probably already like itching for an excuse to go after this guy. So they're like, oh,
yeah,
he's out there doing potentially shady shit with his submarine that we don't really approve of.
Yeah.
Let's go.
There's a, I don't know what her title is. I don't know, head of the Coast Guard is what I'm going to call her, who's interviewed in this documentary. And you can tell, like, fucking hates Peter. And she was just like, she was that person who was like, he's doing something slightly. Let's go.
Step a hair out of line and we will be on you.
Yeah, like she was the one who I think was like, we were not super thrilled that he had built submarines. Like, that's not something that we condone. Yeah. So, also, props to just Danish law enforcement. They're doing the best here. So in this documentary that Emma Sullivan was making, because she's like actively filming all of this, like in real time. Mm-hmm. So the like quote team at RML wakes up the following morning to the news that Peter and, as far as they know, just quote a journalist are missing. That's all they know is like Peter's missing and he had a journalist with him. And around 10:30 a.m., so this is now Friday the 11th, the Nautilus is sighted in the Bay of Kjog? It's a O with a slash through it. In a bay off the Baltic Sea. A nearby bay. So the Nautilus is sighted and Peter makes radio contact with the searchers and he says everyone on board is fine.
Are they though?
And I think the plan at that point was they were like, okay, we're going to like send an escort just to make sure you get back safely. And then at some point, the submarine begins to sink and Peter jumps into the water. However, when he is picked up by rescuers, he is like, oh, don't worry. I dropped Kim off in Copenhagen the night before around 10:30. Meaning, like, there's no one else in the sub. Don't worry. I dropped her off last night.
But when you talked to them on the radio this morning, you said everyone on board. You could have just said, I'm okay, if you were the only one on board.
Yeah. His wording. Mm-hmm. So, immediately, the sinking looks suspicious to the Coast Guard. A.k.a. to our girl, head of the Coast Guard. I should have gotten her name. She's amazing. One thing she mentioned was that when Peter jumped off of like the top of the sub, he left the hatch open. She was like, he could have closed that to like help try to preserve the sub, but he didn't. And then immediately afterwards, like when Peter gets to shore and like press is there trying to interview him because this is like kind of a big deal. Mm-hmm. He tells the press that the Nautilus sank due to, quote, valve failure. And his, like, team back at RML, they're, like, watching these, and they're like, that's not how he would have talked about the Nautilus sinking. Like, that's his, like...
That's his baby.
Masterpiece. And, like, they're like, yeah, he'd be upset about it, but, like, he was very, like, poetic in how he talked, and, like, he would have, like, had something to say about it. He wouldn't just be like...
Nope, the valve's busted.
Yeah, like, you know, I tried to stop it and then, like, it didn't work. So they're like, that was kind of weird. This is where I'm like, props to Danish police because they're like, well, Kim has not gone home, so you might have dropped her off, but she did not go home. So, like, we're just gonna arrest you real quick because we don't know where.
Hold on to you.
We're gonna hold on to you.
We just need to verify your story.
And, like, he was very much getting off of that, like, boat, expecting to go back to his lab and like carry on things as normal. So like at this point, Danish police are like, okay, you say you dropped her off. We're going with that, but like she's not home, so like she is missing.
We just want to hold on to you until we verify your story.
We're just gonna hold on to you real quick. during their initial investigation, police immediately began trying to trace or triangulate Kim's phone, her cell phone. And they cannot find it. So then they're like, okay, well, this is Denmark. We have CCTV footage everywhere. Let's check the footage of the dock where Peter says he dropped her off. Can you
I bet there's no footage of Peter and Kim.
There is certainly no footage. I mean, there is footage.
But not including those people.
Yeah, in the footage is no submarine and no Kim. And so next, the investigators send divers to look at the actual sunken submarine. Because now they're like, did he lie? And like, she is still in the submarine. And they look basically through the windows to see if anyone is in there. And there's no one in the sub.
That you can see through the windows.
True. So they're like, okay. So that night, the night of August 11th, Peter is officially charged with murder. Because Danish police aren't fucking around.
They go straight to charging with murder. I mean, I guess, in order to hold him, they have to charge him with something. I just didn't know they would go straight to murder. Dang.
Denmark ain't fucking around. Which I actually think...
Respect. I mean...
I think there was something that said it was Swedish police that took over, and I wrote that down, and then I couldn't remember why. So it's either Danish or Swedish police. It's definitely Danish Coast Guard. It's Scandinavian police is what we're looking at here. So they announced that he's been charged with murder, and all of his friends and colleagues are like shook. They're like, this is insane. And like, again, Emma is interviewing all these people like as it's happening. Mm-hmm. And literally everyone is like, he is not the kind of person who would do this. Like, he's crazy, but like eccentric.
Crazy.
Yeah, like eccentric inventor crazy, not like murderer crazy. Like, there's no way that this is true. Like, there's got to be an explanation. Like, literally everyone who knew him was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard.
I'd like to think that I wouldn't be fooled by, super charismatic people like that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've got a decent intuition about people.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's a couple people I know that I'm like, if you were ever charged with murder, or if they were ever, like, they discovered a whole bunch of bodies in your basement, I'd be like, I'm actually not surprised by that.
Yeah, there's a couple people I know like that. But, like, you know how we were talking last week about the Gilgo Beach case and, like, how everyone's coming out now saying that Rex Heuermann, they're like, oh, yeah, he's, like, low-key actually very creepy and, like, whatever. No one was saying this about Peter. They were like, no, he was my friend. Like, no, I trusted him. Like,
I would have gone on the submarine with him.
So many people said that. So many people were like, I would have gone on that sub. Like, I did go on the sub. Like, like, people trusted him. Everyone was like, yes, he's crazy, but, like, not this kind of crazy. So, there's that. So, on August 13th, they recover the Nautilus. They're like, we're bringing this up. We're going to do a proper search of the interior. So, they look inside. It's obviously been, like, flooded, so it's, like, kind of a mess. But they do find Kim's jacket, which confirms that she probably did not leave the sub, like, on her own. And then they also find blood. And then at some point over the next couple days, it comes out in the news that Peter has now claimed that Kim died from an accident while on board and that he buried her at sea.
I believe part of that statement.
And he's like,
maybe
not elaborating on any of that. He's just like, there was an accident, she died, and I buried her at sea. On August 21st, a torso is discovered by a cyclist. And DNA tests confirm that it is Kim. So
this is a torso that's like washed up?
Yes.
Okay.
So a torso washes up. So the head, legs, and arms are missing. An autopsy revealed that she had been stabbed 15 times.
Wow, what an accident.
I know. So 15 times, mostly in the groin area. It also revealed injuries that would ensure that the gases inside wouldn't build up and escape. So the way that they described this was like essentially after she had died, like he pushed the lungs out, like pushed the air out of her lungs and like kind of
To
keep her from floating to the top. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also metal pipes had been attached to the torso so that it would sink to the bottom. And it's unclear if cause of death was like firmly established, but I will say as of October 3rd article of that same year, prosecution told the court that the knife wounds had been inflicted, quote, at the time of death or shortly afterwards. So like, I'm saying that just to say
It could
dismemberment was not, like, that was afterwards.
Yeah, the dismemberment. And so that was my next question: is was she intentionally dismembered, or did those parts, what's the word I'm looking for? Like separate kind of naturally as part of decomp and scavenger activity?
Oh, you'll find out.
Okay.
So at the next court hearing, which was September 5th, Peter elaborated on his claim about Kim dying by an accident, because he's still going with the accident.
He ran into my knife. He ran into my knife 10 times.
So he says that he was...
Kim did not have it coming.
No. He says that he was holding the hatch open and it slipped and hit Kim in the head and it fractured her skull. And then he panicked and threw her body overboard after tying a weight around her waist.
And at what point did he decide to stab her groin repeatedly?
Oh, he does not comment on that. He does not comment on how the body became dismembered. He did say, because he's so noble, that he was so distraught that he planned on sinking the Nautilus and taking his own life, because he was so distraught over this. And he explained everything, like the hatch and like all this stuff. He explained it in like great detail. And so like some people thought, oh, he must be telling the truth because he's like acting it out and like, but to me, I was like, isn't that shit that liars do where they like put too much detail into their lies?
Well, you've got to put enough truth into the lie, and it makes it easier for you to believe it and more convincing and whatnot.
Yeah.
Also, I do believe that, you know, he had probably in his mind been like, oh, I'm gonna go down with the ship because it was dramatic.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, people would be talking about it and it would be noble and whatever. And then he realized that he was going to have to die and was like,
yeah.
Ultimately, no.
Yeah.
Self-preservation won out over the thrill of the drama.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, based on the narcissist tendencies, like, well, I 100% believe, because I know narcissists and they're
yeah, it's
exhausting.
So at this point, prosecutors realize that they have to find the rest of Kim's body in order to prove that this is a homicide, because he's claiming that she died of a head wound, essentially.
It's possible she did.
Right, but they're like, we don't have a head to disprove that, and if we don't have that, then there's a possibility that he could walk with this. So they, like, step up their game. They're, like, searching this water. So they said that they searched approximately 200 acres worth of ocean, which put it a great... I don't know that you're supposed to measure ocean with acres, but that was a great measurement tool for me. They made over 3,000 dives, and eventually they brought in an oceanographer who understood underwater currents.
That's what I was about to say, is you got to look at, like, what the current patterns were doing, but also, like, in order to have that, you'd have to have the location of where he dumped her body in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I think they also
And also, that's assuming that he dumped her body whole or dumped all the pieces in the same spot.
And I think they looked at where the torso washed up from and, like, maybe worked backwards from there. So, on October 6th, they recovered a plastic bag that had Kim's clothes and a knife in it. And then on that same day, they found her legs, and then they found a plastic bag that contained her head. The head showed no signs of blunt force trauma. All of those items were weighed down with metal pipes. And then 6 days later, they found a wood saw with an orange handle. And that's significant because in documentary footage that Emma was shooting, you can see the exact same wood saw with the orange handle hanging on. Like, it's so fucking eerie, like, as they're unfolding all of this, because then they go back in the footage, and I think it's the day before he goes out, and you can zoom in behind him and see all of these tools hung up on, like, a pegboard, and there's the saw with the orange handle, and then the very next day you look and it's gone, and there's, like, a different saw up there. So they find that, and then on November 21st and 29th they find her arms.
I'm glad they were able to find all of her.
I know, me too. On January 16th of 2018, Peter is formally indicted on first-degree murder and sexual assault charges. And then on March 18th, the trial begins, and Peter pleads not guilty.
Of course.
Of course. So now Peter has a third version of how Kim died. He's now discarded.
First, he dropped her off. Then it was an accident. Then he buried her at sea. Now let's hear what happened.
Right. Now he
because
says...
there's no head wound.
Yep. Now he says that she died of carbon monoxide poisoning. And...
So why do you stab someone with carbon monoxide poisoning? Is that the treatment for it? Like, oh no, you passed out. Let me stab you to wake you up.
Listen, I have no idea. They said, someone who I guess was in court said that, like, it was very clear that he thought that he was smarter than, like, everyone else in the room, as he's, like, describing how the carbon monoxide got into the submarine and how he was, like, above, or, like, how he wasn't exposed to it, but Kim was. And he was talking in, like, really technical terms about, like, the specs of the submarine and, like, just... like, thinking that he was talking above everyone and therefore, like, not having to be held accountable for, like, his shit. So when the prosecution was like, why did you dismember her body? He said, because I had a big problem in front of me, and that's what you do with big problems. You cut them into small pieces. And he also said he didn't see why it mattered because she was already dead. So that's the kind of person that he is. Like, what kind of restraint do you have to have as a prosecutor?
That is a lot to unpack. I guess good thing he did already cut it up into pieces so that we can do it one by one.
How, as a prosecutor, do you not just take, like... How do you restrain yourself from not just, like, beating the shit out of him in court?
I think I would just have to, like, look around. I would just, like, look at everyone. Look at the jury, look at the judge, look at everyone else, like, is everyone hearing the same
like,
shit?
Do I need to continue with this? Like, are we... He just referred to this human being that he had killed as a big problem that he had to put in, like, turn into smaller problems. Like, so the prosecution is presenting evidence. So obviously they have the pipes and the straps that were used to weigh down the body parts.
Maybe he was, like, kind of secretly going for not guilty by insanity plea, but, like, had to prove that obviously he was out of touch and, like, not one with reality. So then they would be like, oh, this guy's crazy.
You know, that would actually have probably been a smart thing for him to do, but
But I mean, he couldn't go in saying, not guilty because I'm insane.
Right.
He has to be like, no, I'm totally sane. Here's some really crazy things coming out of my mouth, but I'm totally sane. And then everyone will be like, crazy people don't know they're crazy, so obviously he's crazy. Yep.
Just take a drink for something that I'm going to tell you at the very end. Okay. Just about crazy people not knowing that they're crazy.
Oh, okay. I have that argument in my head all the time. I'm like, I wonder if I am legitimately crazy. But crazy people don't know they're crazy, so therefore I'm not crazy. But now if I'm, like, convinced that I'm not crazy, maybe I am one of those crazy people because I'm saying I'm not crazy. But then it's just like, I just go around and around and around. It's the same argument. I'll just get dizzy.
I had that, I remember the first time I had the realization of, like, you probably won't know that you, like, know a sociopath, like, until something goes wrong, because sociopaths are so good at masking, and I was like, what if I start dating a sociopath? And, like,
well, it's not all, like, you know, crazy killers or whatever are sociopaths or psychopaths or whatever. It's just there's, I guess, a correlation between the two, but, like, a lot of psychopaths, or, like, a lot of people who are, you know, classified as or have psychopathic tendencies, they're actually, like, CEOs and like, they're completely, like, normal people just living their life, not killing other people. I mean, at least not directly. They might be a CEO of a company.
I was gonna say, a lot of CEOs are not ethical.
That's why they're so successful.
That's why they're so successful.
They don't get bogged down in the whole emotions of people and whatnot. So
I also meant to say somewhere in here, because I was telling Jarek, I was sort of telling him about this, and this was when I still thought that I would maybe do this episode with him, and so I wasn't trying to tell him too much about it. But I was like, you know how Katy and I always try to, like, you know, talk about the mental health of the killer and, like, you know, give the benefit of the doubt where we can.
Psychoanalysis.
And I was like, yeah, with this guy, I was like, no, f all of that. I was like, I mean, not f all of that. I still believe all of that. This is not a situation.
He does not deserve the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, this is not a situation where I feel like he was failed by the system, or like, he had not a great childhood.
I mean, in a way he was failed by the system because, as you pointed out earlier, like, nobody curbed or corrected that behavior of him lashing out. Like, society failed him because they allowed him to just behave and act like this.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you as an adult are responsible for your behaviors.
Yes,
and
100%.
Yeah, and, like, this is not a situation where he had voices in his head telling him to do something. This is a situation where he is, like, a f***ed up individual. And this is also the part where I would like to tell everyone, if you are drinking spirits with us, just take a sip and have your beverage in hand while we go through this evidence. And just also make sure your children are not around, because it's not great. Okay, so the pipes and the straps that were used to weigh down the body parts were similar to what was found in Peter's workshop. That's basic circumstantial evidence. In the news footage from right after his rescue, and actually in that picture that I gave you, you can actually see a little bit of blood on his nose. It's kind of faint. You can see it a lot better in, like, the actual
photo, and probably better lighting.
Yeah, but, like,
Right.
Yep. And, like, the actual like, video footage of it when he's, like, talking, and you know that it's there, it's, like, pretty obvious. Yeah. But that's Kim's blood. And then after he was taken into custody, they found scratches on his arms. They had a number of women testify about his behavior. This was the point in the documentary where they were like, oh, he was married. Like, currently, at this time, he was married. Like, what the f***? His wife divorced him during the trial and has remained anonymous. So, like, good for her. His marriage was an open marriage, so he was doing whatever the f*** he wanted, I guess. Not to say anything bad about open marriages. Do what you want.
Yeah. Not my marriage.
Yeah.
Not my place to judge.
But there were women to testify that he was, like, pretty open about, like, the fetishes that he was into, which, again, whatever. And most women actually said that he wasn't threatening. He didn't come off as very threatening. But in the time leading up to Kim's murder, his texts to women got more and more violent, almost as if he was, like, testing the waters. Like, seeing what he could kind of get away with. Like, seeing what kind of role-playing he could get away with. At 8:23 a.m. on the morning of the murder, he used his phone to Google the terms beheading, girl, and agony, which was misspelled. They also found snuff films on his computer.
Ugh.
I know. Which, if you don't know what a snuff film is, it's basically someone being murdered for real. And one of those films allegedly showed almost exactly what they think happened to Kim. And he watched that video less than 24 hours before the murder. Which, on a side note, how in the hell was he not on a watch list? Like,
I mean, he kind of was because of the submarines, remember?
but, like, how... I don't know, like... I mean, not at all...
Well, I mean, this...
I mean, I have a friend...
This starts to beg the argument of, like, Big Brother and, like...
Yeah.
How much oversight is too much and, like, how much, like... So, like, on a day-to-day basis, I don't want, the government in my business.
True.
But that's because I'm a perfectly normal person who's not, dangerous or a threat to society. And so, yeah, like, but there's other people who are, but we don't know about it sometimes, i.e., like this guy, until it's too late.
I mean, I have a friend who said that he got a cease and desist letter from, I think it was from his internet provider, because he was, like, streaming, like, movies. Like, from, like a I don't know, like, like, one, not, like, bad movies, but, like, like, movies before they're, like, actually released. He was, like, streaming them from, like, one of those, like, illegal websites. Mm-hmm. He got, like, a cease and desist letter, like, from his internet provider. And I'm like, okay, is that the shit that we're worried about? Is, like, people who are watching, like, the Barbie movie before it's, like, streaming on Netflix? And not, like, this guy? Like, Google. He was Googling that shit. Come on, Google. Like, I know you got guys watching that shit.
Google banned some parents because they had taken photos of their baby's genitals to send to their doctor to say, look, like, there's a spot or there's something going on here. Like, do we need to come in? Do we need to go to the hospital? Like, what is this? What can we do? They were seeking medical advice from a medical professional.
Did they send him, like, via Gmail or something? Or?
Yeah. And so it got flagged as child pornography when it is obviously not.
It's like
and so they've been banned for life from
oh my gosh,
from Google because of that. And it's like, okay, I mean, while we applaud your efforts to like kind of combat child pornography, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, like this
good intent, bad execution. And this is just another way in which that's evidence of that. But
so okay, that is it for evidence list. So a psych eval was done on April 23rd, and Peter was found
to make sure that he was mentally fit for trial.
I guess I don't really know. But they did find that he was a psychopath with narcissistic traits, and that he had a deviant sexuality, and that he was prepared to do this kind of thing again. And I think that's why they probably did it, was to be like, is he...
Yeah. If for some reason he's released.
Yeah. And I'll get to that in a second, because Danish law is a little different, which is probably better in most cases than American law. But police did say that, like, this kind of crime and, like, his kind of personality, they were like, it's probably very unlikely that this was his first murder or crime. Like, you don't do something this violent for the very first time. Like, this, They have tried to link him to other unsolved cases. They haven't had any success so far, but he's like definitely on their radar. On April 25th of 2018, Peter was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Life sentences in Denmark are extremely rare, and they're especially rare for someone who doesn't have any prior record and for only like a single murder, which I thought was interesting. And under Danish law, prisoners who receive a life sentence may request a pardon hearing after 12 years. And average time served in a life sentence is only 17 years. And so I think that is part of why they did the psych eval.
He's most likely done it before. He's definitely done it this time, and he's definitely has the potential to do it again. Yeah,
probably because they know that in 12 years he has the option to apply for a pardon or whatever, and they probably want that on the record of like, you know. On October 20th of 2020, Peter escaped briefly from prison. I say briefly, like literally for like an hour. He threatened a guard with a pistol-like object, and then he was chased down by prison staff and police before they noticed that he had what looked like a homemade bomb strapped to him. And so they were like, okay, we gotta call like the bomb squad. And like there's a picture of him just like sitting in the grass with like surrounded by police. And then of course it wasn't a bomb. It was like just a homemade thing that he had made in prison. So they sent him back. He got I wrote 19 years. I think I meant 19-month sentence. He got another sentence added to that, but
good.
They're not adding that to his life sentence. Again, Danish law, I don't understand it. But they said that it could play a role,
he's serving it not consecutively, but like
I don't know. They said it wasn't going to be added on. So I don't know. But they said that like that charge would play a role if he should ever come up for like a pardon. So he's still in prison. Many of Kim's friends pointed out that the coverage during the trial was way more focused on Peter being a sadistic killer and sensationalizing the crime rather than focusing on the life of Kim. At a memorial that was held for her, her brother Tom said that Kim would want to be remembered for her work and would want women journalists to continue doing the work that she could no longer do. And this is a quote from him. That's exactly how we should remember and honor her, by remembering the words that she wrote, what she stood for, and what she believed in. And in 2018, Kim's family established the Kim Wall Memorial Fund in partnership with the International Women's Media Foundation in her honor. And they award a $5,000 reporting grant annually to a woman and or non-binary journalist whose reporting carries forward Kim's legacy. And this is a quote from the site. This fund was developed in the spirit that Kim would have wanted more women to be out in the world brushing up against life. Through this grant, the IWMF seeks to help bend the world toward Kim's vision, which I just love.
Sweet.
So I'm putting the link to the IWMF site and to the Kim Wall Memorial Fund in the show notes, like at the top, so that you can find it. Because there's a million sources. The thing I was going to tell you at the end was at the very end of the, I think it was the Netflix documentary, there's just like a part, it's like after Emma has like finished an interview, and it's kind of like almost like an off mic thing where it's not supposed to be included in the interview. And Peter's just like randomly starts talking about psychopaths and like describing them and talking about like their traits, and like literally describes himself. He's like, they're narcissistic, they have delusions of self-grandeur, they're great speakers, and this and this. And he's like, but the thing is like, do they know that they're psychopaths? Like, does the psychopath know? And he's like pointing to himself. He's like, does the psychopath know that he's a psychopath? I don't know, because I wouldn't know if I was. And like, it's just so on the nose. I don't know. And I will say that the HBO documentary was made, I think, by one of Kim's, maybe not a friend, but by like a contemporary of hers. And she made it specifically so that there would be a documentary that was more focused on Kim like so that Kim didn't get lost in the story of things.
Right.
Because it is...
in the drama of Peter.
Yeah. But that's the story of Kim Wall. So, sorry about that, everyone.
It's a real bummer.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. It was... I'm telling you, once I watched that documentary, I was like, I gotta...
Did we ever learn, like... Did she say something that, like, set him off? So, like, I know that she was, she was interviewing about his work. Like, did she start asking some questions that may have, like, poked holes in something that he was trying to do? Or maybe made him feel, like, attacked or belittled or emasculated or whatever that caused him to snap or lash out? Or is this something that it was like an opportunistic of like, sure, she's there for an interview, but really he's like, you know what, let's do something else instead of an interview.
Yeah, they I think a detective or a prosecutor said right after the like verdict said this wasn't a premeditated murder of Kim Wall. This was the premeditated murder of the next woman. And they said, like, Kim was just the next woman who went down on the submarine with him. And they were also very clear that, like, he was actively trying to get other women to go on the sub with him. One of his, I guess she was a volunteer. They called her Sarah. That wasn't her real name. And they also digitally changed her face in the documentary, which was a little weird to watch because she looked like a real person and it was just not her real face. But she had gotten a text from him also like saying the sub is like tomorrow would be a great day for you to come down on the sub with me. Why don't you come? And it just so happened that Kim like said yes first. And this poor girl had such basically survivor's guilt, and she at one point she was like, it's becoming more and more clear to me that I think I was the one that was supposed to die. And then also something that you said earlier was that like so many other people, like journalists too, had said like, I would have gone on the sub. Like that's any journalist would have gone on the sub with him. Like there was nothing threatening about him. Like this was
people knew that she was going there.
Yeah.
Like multiple people knew where she was going to be and who she was going to be with and when she was supposed to be back, which is great because they were able to get, like notify authorities. And even better that the authorities actually listened and responded immediately.
Yeah. And then they also mentioned that like this like horrible irony of that like Kim had gone and covered these stories in so many like dangerous places like North Korea and Uganda. Denmark is like...
This is her backyard. Like, she should have been fine.
Famously one of the safest places in the world. Like, Denmark is. And it's like, yeah, she should have been fine. And so many other people had... And, like, even people who knew Peter, they, so many people were asked, would you have gone on the sub? And they were like, yeah, without a second thought, I would have gone on that sub with him.
Hell yeah, I've been on a sub.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a really cool like submersible research vessel thing. It was like real small.
Yeah,
and we didn't actually get to get it in the water, but the guys were like, yeah, like while it's dry docked or whatever, you can come in and like look around. And so we ended up hanging out and drinking beer and flirting. It was it's like the research guys and then us girls. It was, we were there for our field camp, so it was the scientists and scientists.
A little scientist flirting, as one does. But yeah, it's just...
Well, if you want to see a picture of Pretty Kim and a picture of Peter with blood on his nose, you should check out our Facebook and Instagram at The Tales We Tell Podcast. If you want to see pictures but don't do the social media, check out our website, thetaleswetellpodcast.com. If you want to support us and get yourself some sweet, sweet swag, You can check out our Redbubble store. We've got multiple adorable logos. You can put that on anything. And if you want to support us but you don't need the stuff, you can go become patrons at patreon.com. Search The Tales We Tell. You get early access to episodes, commercial-free listening, sometimes some fun bonus content, every now and then some love notes and stickers and all sorts of good stuff.
Yep. And we won't be back next week, but there will be an episode next week.
Then you get Jarek.
Yeah.
Week.
Yeah, you guys get Jarek next week, so which I know everyone loves. My dad specifically. And I don't know why I'm saying that with such a tone. Sorry, everyone.
Jarek does a great job.
Jarek does a great job, and he is our fearless producer and editor who gets to cut out all of our mouth noises and ums and all sorts of stuff. So anyways, we'll see you guys sometime next week. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.